Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back if this is your second, third, fourth, or fifth time on one of our webinars. If it is not and it's your first time, thank you for joining us. We're here today to talk about the value of a metric-based strategic account plan and to talk a little bit about how the critical components of a strategic account plan, some core metrics inside of a strategic account plan, some best practices, and a little bit of expertise can help to improve, grow relationships and revenues inside of your strategic accounts. I am Dennis Chapman Jr. I'm the moderator of the webinar. In about 10 seconds, I'm going to pass over the baton to Dennis Chapman Sr., who has been speaking on the value of metric-based strategic account plans to many of Fortune 100 organizations as recently as probably about 2 hours ago. And he's going to share with you some of the bullets that I had touched on here at the beginning. Just a couple of administrative points really quickly. Always go through on the right-hand side on your GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar bar. You'll see an area where you can enter any questions or chat or send us messages. Please utilize that as you'd like to, and at the end we have time to answer some of those questions, and we'll get through as many as we can before the 45 minutes or so is over with. If there's anything that needs to go on, or if you have any questions that you'd like to take outside the webinar, you can send them to us, and we have contact information down towards the end that you could send to us directly through email, or you could visit us at our website, chapmanhq.com, and send us any questions, concerns, or anything that you have through there. We will be recording the webinar, and everyone here will get at least a copy of the slides after we're finished, and at some point we will post a live version of this online if you'd like to relive it, rehash it, or share it with any fellow colleagues or people. But without any further ado, so we can get on to the good stuff, and while you're on the phone, I'm going to hand off the microphone to Dennis Sr. to speak about the value of a metric-based SAM plan.
Well, Denny, thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and as always, I'd like to say thank you to the participants that are on the phone with us today, and kudos for taking a few moments out of their busy schedule to try to improve. I think continuous learning and improvement is critical. Today's topic, just for the record, is probably one of the hottest topics going around out there today, and I believe probably the key reason is a lot of organizations today have a great appreciation for their top accounts or strategic accounts, whatever you would like to prefer to call them, and most importantly, they would like to have a way or processes or methods to become a little more proactive versus reactive. So we've got a pretty rich agenda here that we're going to cover today. And just to refresh what Denny said, we're going to try to keep my portion to somewhere around a 30-minute timeline, and after that we'll leave time certainly for questions. And as Denny mentioned, if there's some personalization that you'd like around things that are maybe relevant just to your organization, feel free to reach out and touch us. And today's talking points or discussion points are certainly maybe a quick refresh on really what is account management process and planning. What are some of those critical components of a world-class, or best-in-class strategic account plan? I'm actually going to show you an example and toggle over to one. The core strategic account plan metrics, and we live in a world that is very analytical today. It's statistically driven, even in the sports world. It's just an analogy. Everybody's either read the book or heard about the movie or heard about the book Moneyball. I mean, it's sort of revolutionized a little bit of thinking in sports around if we've got dashboards and certain kinds of metrics and measurements, it really guides us to do a better job in no matter what we're working on, especially strategic account management. What are some of those best practices for utilizing a strategic account plan internally as well as externally? And then probably the biggie is, how does it create revenue for both you as a supplier, but also your client? How does the use of a strategic account plan enable us to appreciate that kind of revenue? So let's talk a little bit about the customer-supplier relationship world today. Quite often in my travels around the globe, with, as Denny said, many of the Fortune 100 or 500 companies, we're seeing a little bit of degradation around the traction of a supplier to the customer world. I don't know if it certainly affected the whole internet or the digital world, if we want to call it that, has created a little separation there, or maybe not as much knowledge as we used to. And in the customer world, we know there's at least 6 critical drivers going on that they've got to deal with every day: finance, cost, decision-making, other options for their business, pre-qualification, how they work things, looking for total solutions versus just Band-Aids, greater resource constraints, certainly in the customer world. And I don't know if it's fostered by whether it be cell phones or computers or technology, but there's an era of impatience. We want things now. We want it in bullet-sized chunks. And some of that's new for the suppliers. And it's causing a disconnect, or sometimes we refer to maybe a lower rate of loyalty between a customer and a supplier, because some of the supplier world are made up of factors that are a little incongruent to the customer world. I always find it fascinating when meeting with a client. I say, how do you define a partnership with a customer? And you take what a customer might define partnership as, and quite often they are 2 different kinds of definitions. You know, the customer is looking for a lot more of your products, services, solutions for hopefully lower prices because of volume, and you as a supplier are hoping to receive all those additional revenues on services, solutions, products, but at your same margins, if not better, because of the value adds that you add. So really, as a transition here today, we're talking about how do we make these worlds work better together. And one thing we know is that account strategy and planning is one of the methods that can make that happen. We recommend in account management a 6-step process. Very easy to follow the wheel, a little bit right to left. It all starts with segmentation, building teams, and where we're focused at today quite a bit is this whole account strategy, which actually should contain in it opportunity management. And certainly probably 2 of the most critical inspection tools that we have out there are internal account reviews and external account reviews. Quick summary for probably a lot of people is, what is strategic account planning? Well, it's really to capture and analyze a very valuable intelligence or customer information. It's also collaboration amongst the team to be more strategic in guiding the direction of the relationship. And finally, it is a roadmap to guide the team. If we don't write things down or document some things, I think it's quite often that valuable knowledge gets lost. And it's also a template. What I mean by template, it's a template that maybe has the guidance of what is the right information to capture and collaborate around. And for today's discussion, we're really going to look at that in more of a metrics context. What are those metrics that we should be very focused on when doing strategic account management and planning to assess the current situation and potentially identify gaps in the relationship? And the real leads us to the real purpose of an account plan is to really get us all harmonized, both internally, all your team members, as well as externally, the customer, around maybe moving from a current state to a more desired future state. It's also that roadmap I talked about. It's sort of what do we operate. It's like an operating procedure we're working towards, and enables us to have more thorough reviews and analysis around things like financials, relationships, opportunities, and knowledge. It creates a vehicle to help us be more influence, create, communicate our strategy, again, both internal and external. And what's really important, it's the communication device. That most often what we find out today is that there are a vast number of different kinds of cross-functional resources on an account team, and it is critical that everybody knows their role, know how to work as a team, and the account plan can serve as that baseline to help make that happen. Another important grounding principle here as we move into the plan itself is the methodology. We like to keep it into 4 critical buckets that account management is not complicated. If we just think about that, we want to do this to the right accounts and contacts. We want to make sure we got the right team members. We want to make sure those team members are doing the right activities and practices, and make sure that they're doing them the right number of times. And if we execute to that, we should, and document that in our strategic account plan. That, in addition to all the knowledge that we should know about in a customer, makes it a very rich environment for us to work together as a cross-functional account team. So, one of the core discussion points today was what really is in a strategic account plan. Here's an example of sort of like a balloons or bubble diagram, where we certainly move in top right to left, account overview, who they are, a financial profile, and we'll talk a little bit more about these later. Some strategic knowledge points. An example, do we know the top priorities in our customer? Do we know who the key influencers are in our customer? A SWOT that we can assess strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats relevant to us and our solutions. Do we really have a good listing of opportunities and projects in action? Our initiatives. How about our relationships? One of the metrics we're going to talk about shortly is client relationships. Internal operational initiatives, what they really are. Who's on the team, both your own internal team and the customer. And some form of a account situational assessment, which we might even make synonymous with what we would call a risk, like a risk assessment done by your account team. Ultimately, if I've got knowledge points around all these critical areas, I've got this team knowledge bank. So I'd like to think of the strategic account plan a little bit like a hypothesis that, based on all the, if we have the right information and we can make a hypothesis about what we'd like to happen with this account and maybe what that future state would look like, the more knowledge we have, the higher probability that my hypothesis will be accurate. Now, when building a strategic account plan, there is a process we recommend. And certainly, using an account plan, you should be doing some adequate customer research. You're very capable of reading this, or when you get the download, you'll see these. But research is critical. There should be the actual execution of completing an account plan. And there's a fairly elaborate list of some of the metrics I'm going to talk about today. You execute the plan. By the way, some people ask me, what's a good parameter? Well, you sort of update the plan monthly, but you review it quarterly and maybe update the goal, strategy, tactics quarterly, but you got to execute. And the plan says, okay, are we executing in accordance to what we laid out as a team? And certainly you want to review it, both internally and even with customers. And we'll talk about the customer review a little bit later, but most importantly, quite often you should expect what you inspect. So certainly there is an element of inspecting the account review to make sure that we deliver on what we expect. So what are strategic account plan metrics? Well, we do look at, moving left to right a little bit, there's three usual critical components that I'll show you again live in an account plan. We think there should be some form of a dashboard which has charts, graphs, key elements, financial, opportunity, relationship graphs, and there should be some core metrics in each of those areas, whether it relates to year-to-date target, revenue, wallet share, estimated revenue. In a summary of everything we know about the account, there should be these critical elements of summary information and some critical additional core metrics like an account rating, internal rating, which that is that I'll define for you, a loyalty rating, which is that voice of the customer metric, and certainly a relationship penetration index. And then certainly around opportunities, there should be quite a bit of information around what does our pipeline look like, and another metric we might want to think about, do we have a way for more effectively qualifying that an opportunity? And as you see here in the opportunity and projects, that not only do we want to look at opportunities within a specific account, but we should be looking at the pipeline growth of total opportunities within an account or within a SAM program, and that's critical. So let me do a quick example for you of an account plan to try to bring some of that to life. So the dashboard itself, you want to have some critical measurements and metrics around financial, and these are the actual this information is coming from the actual plan that I'm referring to here, which is actually an Excel version. We'll talk a little bit later that it could be in a CRM version, but this is an account plan. This just happens to be the dashboard tab that's creating these charts and graphs based on information that's been populated in the summary tab. So certainly here's some examples of charts and graphs you and your team can talk about. These are those valuable metrics. Now we're quantifying things. One of the big challenges in strategic account management planning is that many plans are what I'll call more qualitative than quantitative. It's very hard to create charts and graphs, pictures that guide us. So these are the pictures that help guide us quite a bit. In addition to the dashboard around the financial metrics, I spoke to the importance of having metrics around opportunities. And here's just a quick example of how maybe your tracking of estimated revenue by the qualifier rating or estimated revenue by business unit, estimated revenue by status of where things are in your pipeline. In addition to that, the other third critical dashboard metrics that we're going to speak to a little bit more are these whole relationship measurements and metrics about our penetration index. Are we high, wide, and deep? Are we high, wide, and deep across many functional units? Do we have strong advocates, supporters in our customer? Do we have people that we need to address? What does our entire relationship network? We've all heard this for many years, how important it is to build a high, wide, deep relationship network. Well, now we're putting it into action. We want to be able to assess that, discuss it, and use that as part of our team strategy and find out the gaps. Where are our gaps? Now, just for information purposes, that information is coming from what we would call the summary portion of any plan. And the summary portion of that plan is basically showing us, critical information we know about, an account overview information, some background information. This is that financial overview that's populating our dashboard. So as I share this kind of information, keep in mind I'm starting to point to the most valuable metrics of a metric-based account plan. The strategic knowledge points. This might be the qualitative information of the plan. And then I get into economic value, a SWOT analysis, client relationships. This is exactly the kind of data that enables me to plot, chart, and analyze my relationships high, wide, and deep. And I could also then take a look at my opportunities. Now, a lot of my detail in my opportunities should come from more of a deeper dive, specifically relevant to an opportunity. So my real point here is basically that what I'm referring to here, the core metrics, should pop to life. By us as a team working on account plans and creating strategy, these are some of the most critical measurements and metrics that we should start to focus on. Now, one of the questions we get quite often is, what are the most critical? Because there is a principle that says, hey, we really shouldn't have too many points of reference, and there's another point that says there should be a good combination of lagging and predictive. So what I would recommend is I would always start out with probably at least 3 critical measurements and metrics in my dashboard in account management. One would certainly be the loyalty rating, some form of voice of customer. I mean, how can we plan without understanding what our customer is thinking or knowing or acting or doing? The other is certainly understanding my financial situation in the account, a metric that tells me what they're buying, how much they're buying, how we're doing relevant to share. And then the third is certainly something, a metric around my account opportunity, my funnel that many of us know with, as well as having a specific qualifier that rates the opportunity on maybe a scale of 0 to 100. So I have a pretty good understanding of where the gap might be so that I don't forecast things that probably have low probabilities of closing. I do believe a fourth metric is what we call an account team internal rating. And just for people to understand what that is a little bit, it's really a summary of this whole summary tab that helps us have a dashboard here of internal assessment by the team as it relates to what we view around the market share, the competitive situation, activities, key indicators, etc. And this sort of tells me I've got a target. You could also think of this as a risk factor. In this particular scenario, our target is to have accounts internally be perceived by us as 80%. Here it's actually 22. I'd say in this particular case, we're at high risk that something not so positive could happen in that account. So that's the account team intern. So when I really try to simplify things, and I do want to keep it simple, they're probably the top four: the loyalty, the relationship penetration index for sure, an opportunity type metric, and the financial and account rating. They're probably the five. I miscount a little bit, but I would say they're the top five. I would not go much further than that in a new program, even in a emerging program, and maybe a more mature program, which might be by definition in its third year or more. I think you could probably maybe add a couple. Now, the other point that we said we would speak to today is how are people using strategic account planning as a best practice to get the most value from it. So these are the practices we're seeing out there, we're endorsing, we're providing solutions around so that teams internally communicate, collaborate, and cooperate. Communicate, collaborate, and cooperate, because that's what you really need. You need your team members doing that. And where the account plan fits is, again, moving from top right to left. Account team planning, coaching. By the way, this is an excellent discovery of ours that we've learned that one of the most valuable uses of an account plan is having a coaching template or document to have sort of the one-on-one discussions between a manager and a specific account manager around a specific account. Reviewing that account plan is very powerful. Executive leadership meetings, by the way, they may not exactly use the account plan. They may use excerpts from it, but the account plan is going to be the feeder for all the critical information to the executive leadership team. Compensation planning, we're seeing creative uses of the account plan and some of the metrics, charts, and graphs within it to align to maybe KPIs and bonuses for very good performance around the execution. And finally, certainly internal business reviews. Again, the account plan is that feeder of information that may end up in, for example, 8 or 10 PowerPoint slides as an internal business review that probably lasts no longer than 45 minutes to 60 minutes. But if there is a question, the account plan is the vehicle that enables us to have that deeper dive. Now, what a lot of us forget is the value of best practice of how to use the account plan externally. All right. Now, am I suggesting right away that we would share the account plan with our customer? Probably not in its current state. Maybe portions of it. I would have, and you may have some relationships that might make sense, a lot of sense, to sit down and the same 3 words: communicate, collaborate, and cooperate with your account. But look at the opportunities we have for externally utilizing the strategic account plan. We have collaborative action planning with our customer. We have an external business review. Sometimes our clients are doing them every 6 months, and in some scenarios once a year. We do endorse the every 6 months, no less than that. However, there are some situations that once a year works. It's a great feeder to get into joint and balanced scorecards. It's a great feeder of knowledge to share with your customer and use within your team for executive roundtables. And by the way, to doing the ultimate sort of shareholder, stakeholder review, because you really got 2 kinds of reviews here. You might have an operational review, which talks about projects, the relationship, but really the shareholder stakeholder review is really talking about your current state of your relationship and how you're both working to move it to a new state. So they're a little bit different. So again, we've got this valuable use, bringing the worst thing that I see of an account plan is when teams work so hard, they put it together, they get this information, and it sits on the shelf. You've got to integrate it in. You've got to, it's probably not a great word, but you got to operationalize it. You got to get it into one of our, it's almost like your Outlook. It's something we refer to on a regular basis because it's guiding us. Our whole team is guiding. a best practice. A lot of companies, if they're using an Excel version, they post it as part of the account record as an attachment. If it's integrated into the CRM, it's a non-issue. It's right there, accessible for all the team members. Now, this is probably one of the more important slides that we're talking about today, because why do it? I think the big operational question is, why do it? Well, I would say humans are very easy to predict. They only do things if there's a reward that stimulates the behavior. Now, here are some of the why do it's, but I'd like to open our horizons a little bit. The why do it is really not just for us as suppliers, but also for our customer. So moving from bottom left across the semicircle here, it'll help us focus on right high-value activities and opportunities. For example, your customer is very interested in surviving for the future, and they're very interested in partnering with suppliers who are going to have a revenue impact to them. And sometimes what you're providing or selling to them or providing a solution has direct correlation and impact, so that ability to work on it, collaborate with them, cooperate with them on it, has a direct impact potentially in the bottom line for them. The second area that is very critical, that a strategic account plan can provide value, is by having this, as I called it, knowledge bank. It helps eliminate potentially some of the cost challenges that I may be faced with as a customer as well as a supplier, because I'm planning for it and I'm moving away from one of the most expensive models there is, and that model is reacting, the reaction model. I saw years ago a high-tech organization that didn't do strategic account planning. When their customer had an issue, they'd put the SWAT team together, fly everybody out there, fix it in the day, a week, or whatever it is, and that's a very costly endeavor, not to mention the possible scars that are on the relationship. So account planning, one of the big values is creating proactivity between the supplier and the customer. Everyone has this common interest, resource management. By having account planning, you can work more effectively with the resources you have today, as well as help guide the customer in how to use their resources, so you end up team to team and efficiently use the right resources in the engagement model. Strong economic impact. By the way, it also relates to if you put resources into equipment, into solutions, into products. Resource management can span all that. The fourth area is account plan. Having a documented metric-based account plan helps us deliver to the priorities. We can look at the economic value we're delivering versus expectations. We can look at, are we relevant to our customer, to how they want us to be relevant. And basically, I can put relevancy and economic value is, am I enabling their priorities to come to life? Am I impacting them? These are bottom line impacts. And finally, milestones and checkpoints is it enables us to stay the course and not make costly errors and go down the wrong trail in a short period of time. Now, what are some of the success factors? When using a metric-based account plan and having a dashboard and having these displays, we've got to involve senior leadership. Now, keep in mind, I didn't say just supplier senior leadership. I think it's both. I know it's both client and supplier senior leadership. They must be involved in the process. In a metric-based plan, I've got to take advantage of the charts, graphs, and illustrations when I do my account reviews. It enables me to focus better, to highlight critical issues or gaps or trends. So I need to use the power of tools to show me things that are no longer gut feel or intuitive. I want to work more in a strategic account management arena based on what we call facts and insights versus just intuition. And third, the value of a metric-based account plan, the big critical success factor is I got to coach to it. I got to coach to these charts and graphs. I've got to use them in my, if you call it your weekly, bi-weekly, monthly planner reviews, whatever your term is, but in the field, even field travel, I've got to integrate my plan into the hands of the coach. Now, heads up, there's some organizations that need to build out their templates, their coaching skills, whatever it is, but I want to create this living environment of the plan and have it have its own life and use. So let's quickly summarize some of the key things we talked about today. I want to keep my metrics in my plan valuable, simple, and I want to make sure some of them are predictive. An example, a relationship penetration index, if it's low, can predict I'm going to have issues in the future because I don't have the high, wide, deep network I need. A metric-based plan gives us the ability to feed a dashboard. And that's critical because now I can coach to the dashboard. I want to use facts and insights. I want to quantify things. I certainly don't want to totally abandon qualitative information because it's important, but I certainly want to use facts and insights I can quantify, and I want to use them internally and externally. I want to engage with both our own organization leadership team as well as the client leadership team. Now all of a sudden, I've got the charts, graphs, images I can share with my customer, share with my leadership team, and they understand that. I want to make sure my metrics that I use speak to the financial important areas, the relationship, opportunities, and risk. They're the four critical buckets that my metrics should fit in. You could certainly get very sophisticated and add several others. Keep it simple. And when I get this practice rolling, I can incorporate planning into my team KPIs. By the way, not just the account team. I could integrate it into the external team within my own organization, my cross-functional members. And probably my big aha for everyone is to make sure by using a strategic account plan and engaging the customer as part of the team and getting their feedback and including that, I'm now planning outward in versus inward out. Inward out is sort of planning through our eyes, a very dangerous practice. Many of the metrics we've suggested are outward in that gives us the ultimate view or knowledge bank in our strategic account plan. And when we have the ultimate knowledge bank, it significantly increases the probability of your client being successful through you and with you, and you being successful through and with your client. So there are my key points today. I've tried to, as advertised, keep it in that 30-35-minute window, which we've successfully done. And I'm going to pass the baton over to Denny and then see we've got some questions I know that have come in.
Thank you. Let me go take a quick look. So the first question somebody has asked, and you touched on this a little bit, so I'll let you go back over it, is would you share your account plan with clients?
Well, I did touch on that, and it's you know, I would probably say overall probably not in its current state most of the time. However, we're starting to see some clients who want to be more collaborative with their supplier, and I think you got to read that on a one-by-one basis. Probably what I would share most would be maybe a synopsis of the plan, in a PowerPoint, maybe a very brief PowerPoint. I emphasize the word brief, but I definitely would share some of the knowledge points to get their validation. I think customer validation is critical.
What are your suggestions for getting the entire account management team to utilize a standardized strategic account management or strategic account plan? I'm sorry.
Well, one of the things that every organization deals with, we saw it through the whole era of Salesforce.com and other CRMs and whatever, compliance. And it's my belief that one of the major issues that cause lack of compliance is lack of value to the user. So by integrating it into what I showed you, the internal opportunities as well as the external opportunities, it becomes a living instrument. It becomes a vehicle. It becomes valuable, and that, as well as coaching to it and using the information on an ongoing basis. So the frustration, I think, arises when people do it. It sits on a shelf. It's never referred to. I think it's got to become much like in the old era of sales, a call sheet or whatever you actually debriefed with your coach on. It's got to become a living instrument. So anything you can do to make that account plan part of your process and a living instrument will really heighten the perceived and recognized value from it, and certainly the use of it.
And there's one other question that came in, and they would like to know about the role of CRM systems in building a strategic account plan.
Well, there's no mystery that I showed you one option today, keeping it simple, having it in an Excel format. But there are a lot of organizations that have landed on either their own or some other version of CRM. So what I strongly recommend is you look at whatever area you've identified as account management, and maybe put some of the practices, charts, and graphs relevant to that. We've worked with organizations and really just served as guides or consultants to guide them how to do that. And some organizations actually, instead of using our tools, license the methodology and put it in there. But I think one of my cautions to you is probably make sure that if you're doing account management, there's some separation from sales. So you certainly have contact records, you certainly have account records, and the account management best practices and dashboards and scorecard all fit more under the account management area. So try to keep a little bit of separation there.
Okay, and that's all the questions that came in, so thank you for answering those. If you have any questions we didn't answer, or anything pops up or comes to mind in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, or kind of lower right-hand corner, you'll see my email address, dennychapman@chapmanhq.com. There's our general 800 number in my extension. Reach out to me, and I will do my best to answer your question the best way that I can, and if I can't, we'll get you in front of a resource that can. There's also other resources that speak to strategic account planning and metrics, et cetera, at chapmanhq.com. They're at our resource center. Just register there, and you'll have unlimited access to hundreds of resources that will help you to grow and retain the revenue and relationships you have within your top accounts. So we will be sending out a copy of the slides. We had a request for some screenshots of the metrics, and we'll make sure that you all have at least explanations and what they would look like in some sort of documentation. And that'll get out to everybody who's been on the webinar here in the next 48 hours or so. So be on the lookout for that, and also for any other events and webinars that are coming up. I wish everyone a good Wednesday and a successful week.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Have a great day, as Denny said.
Bye-bye.